Thank you, everybody, for joining us for the first Boring AI show of 2024. Tally, it's awesome to be back.
Yeah, it's exciting. I'm ready to jump back in. I feel like somehow January's been a whirlwind, and we're already, coming to the end of January here. So ready to jump in on all things 2024.
Yeah, and already there's been, here's a major announcement from OpenAI. Here's a major release from Mixtral. Here's a major,
right.
Update in with MidJourney, the rumor of video now being in their image generation. So much going on here. But why don't we start in the news as we normally do? So just for everybody who's new, we start in the news, then we talk about our topic of the day, then we talk about our wins. Which is a positive thing we end on, because there's all kinds of bad news, and so we like to spread some good news of what's going on. So, in the news, Tally, we were talking about Davos.
Yes, and I know usually I present the in the news, but I know today, Tim, this is a topic you wanted to kind of delve into a little bit, because I know for me this was actually the first time hearing about this topic. I actually brought it up to a few friends yesterday just out of curiosity, and that was news to them as well. So it's interesting that this isn't, at least in my circle, as well known as it should be, it seems like. Yeah.
So for those who don't know, the Davos Summit is hosted by the World Economic Forum, and it's an invitation-only event. I'm still waiting for my invitation to show up. I'm sure it got lost in the mail this year.
Right.
But it's basically a bringing together of business people, of academics, of researchers, of politicians, of nonprofit leaders. Like there's all kinds of very influential people at this summit, and they're there to talk about the world's biggest problems and how to address them, how to move forward on these things. And so this year, no surprise to anyone, one of the big topics was artificial intelligence. And so in this gathering, and it's called the Davos Summit because it's in Davos, Switzerland, which one of the things that's really interesting about the summit is watching the videos that people post of like, this is what it's like here, because it's this gorgeous ski town. It just is totally, totally beautiful. Winter Wonderland kind of setup. So the big takeaways from a news perspective was there was lots of talk about AI regulation. There was a lot of talk, which we're going to talk about in a little bit here. Mm-hmm. There was lots of talk about, what's the role of open source in AI? Interesting topics there. And really, it's just debate and discussion. But one of the big things that I wanted to share with you all is hey, Ray, welcome aboard, is in the topic of AI regulation, that there's been a conversation shift. This was noted by a few of the AI, I guess I'll call them luminaries that I follow, that there was a lot less discussion about the end of the world and a lot more discussion about, well, what do we need to do like now, for helping people now? How do we prevent inequality? How do we make sure that we don't have just a few organizations controlling all of the AI infrastructure? And it's a pretty major paradigm shift, because last year, how many times you couldn't flip through the news without people like, AI is an existential threat and it's going to kill us all. And, meanwhile, like, there's real problems that are really impacting people today that were being ignored. Mm. And so interesting paradigm shift in the AI regulation conversation at the Davos Summit.
That's really cool. And I wrote in my notes here, I know we touched on this a little bit briefly before the conversation. You mentioned something about AI and climate change as well. Was that a discussion or?
Yeah. Okay. So, one of the things that is really fascinating is a lot of times AI is brought up as like, this could help solve climate change. Mm. And a lot of what people don't really think about is the energy it takes to run these AI systems and how that contributes to carbon emission and climate change. So, one of the trends we're going to talk about are small language models. And the reason they matter is they take a lot less energy. They take a lot less compute power to run these things. And train these things. And so when we think about environmental impact, you don't need as many giant data centers working and chugging through all this energy to train on data. So very, very interesting kind of paradigm shift again of, yes, it can help with these problems, but it also is going to contribute to this problem unless we get it under control. So I thought that was also a very interesting topic.
Definitely. And I think it's worth bringing up. I think sometimes, we try to overlook some of those perhaps more negative attributes, but I think it's good to look at everything as a whole. So interesting.
Very cool. So
how big is this summit? Just out of curiosity, usually.
I am not 100% sure. I think it's a couple thousand people.
Got it.
But I don't know 100. I don't have a statistic on that.
Got it. It's fairly larger. Interesting.
I will say the rooms that I've seen, like the presentation rooms, they're full, very, very full. Every single one of them. And that is the format. Think of this like a conference. There's a whole bunch of roundtables, a whole bunch of presenters, a whole bunch of discussion topics. Right. But the real, what everybody says, the real value of this place is the networking that happens after hours. So, which is pretty much every networking event ever.
Right. So, very cool.
So pretty neat event. I'm very curious to, kind of keep an ear, because we're going to hear more and more of what people were doing and talking about at the summit as the weeks go on. Just happened last week. And then next year when I get my invite, I'll bring everybody. We'll do a live feed or something from there. So,
there you go.
So cool.
Awesome.
All right. You guys want to get into trends of 2024 or
let's do it.
Tally, anything else on Davos?
No, I think it's interesting. I think it's definitely good to know that that's occurring, and definitely will keep my eyes peeled for the latest and greatest news around, some of the outcomes from that conference. Very interesting.
Very cool. All right, Tally, what are you watching for 2024? What do you think's one of our big trends we're going to see?
No, so just so listeners know, Mind Over Machines actually has a bi-weekly newsletter as well, where we discuss some of this. And as folks who know me know, I am a huge psychology nerd. I love understanding the human perspective and how people perceive different things. And so, on that note, something I'm really going to be looking for in 2024 is the perception shift in AI. A lot of what I've been seeing in terms of some trends that are out here, and I'll share some statistics to support this hypothesis, is that we're really going to see a shift from, fear or foe of AI to AI being a friend or, something that could be really beneficial. I think that there was a lot of unknown last year, and it was very hyped up. And I think it's getting to the point where it's becoming more practical and people understand different use cases and are bringing it down to a more granular level, which I think makes it a little less intimidating for some folks. So on that note, I think there's a couple different ways that our perception shift of AI is going to impact 2024. So on a business level, there's a Medium article about, again, shifting AI from this hype, buzzy thing to actually a core business strategy that's going to be critical for almost all industries to adopt. They stated a quote from Forbes that 97% of business owners already believe that generative AI tools such as ChatGPT will have a positive impact on their business, which is really interesting. So I think that's just a good call out to note that it's not just something that could give you a competitive edge, but it's actually a necessity that majority of businesses are seeing as something they're going to need to adopt as part of their core strategy this year. So I thought that was interesting.
Can I jump in on that, Tally? So this is a good example too. I've been in different research companies presenting their reports of CEOs are all excited and worried on the AI, but not from a is this going to ruin my business? It's we don't want to miss this train. And I get it. Like, I've had very similar conversations, at Mind Over Machines. We don't want to miss this train. And other companies that we've talked to, that's where their mindset is. Like, what happens when our competitor gets really good at this AI thing and we didn't, and we didn't invest the time and they did. So, I'm not surprised to see that. But what this research company was also talking about, which was also really interesting, was that didn't extend far beyond the CEO. That the other executive team members were kind of like, oh, that's but we've got all this other stuff to do. We got to keep the business running, so finding that balance between the CEO's fear of missing out and fear of obsolescence, as well as balancing out and you've got day jobs, you got tons of other stuff to get done. How do you find the balance? So I think that's something that will come up in 2024 often.
Yeah, and I think that's a great call out, because I think a lot of it's going to be around how we present this to the workforce, whether it's just another additive to their day job that they're going to have to, learn, or something, an additional task for them to do. So it seems overwhelming, versus something that could really benefit their employee experience. If it's going to be, in terms of workforce adoption, how that's presented to the workforce and making sure they're along for that journey. It's not just something they're instructed to do. On that note, I think hopefully some of the predictions that I've seen out there as well is a perspective shift within the workforce. So BBC came out with an article stating that employees want to work with AI, and are interested in upskilling for professional development purposes. There was a PwC stat that I found really interesting, showing that 71% of employees, this was across the US, 71% of employees believe that AI will enhance their jobs, and 63% believe that AI will enable them to focus on more creative tasks, which I thought was really interesting. So again, I think if we're framing this AI adoption in terms of the benefits that it has for folks, I think that it would make it a lot easier for individuals to want to take on and learn AI, as opposed to an added task or tool that they need to add to their list. So I just thought that was an interesting call out, and hopefully sheds light on how different business leaders can, hopefully introduce AI in a way that's, beneficial to the employee experience.
Yeah. And that, that's also goes in with there's been a lot of research lately about AI's unlikeliness of replacing whole jobs. Now, tasks, yes, it can replace tasks. And we've been saying that for years now. It can replace tasks, but jobs are much more complex than just a task. Now, with that said, we've been, anybody who's been listening to Boring AI Show, we constantly say humans know what human value you bring to your work. Make sure you understand that and express it. And I think one of the great things that we're going to see in AI, this year and in next years to come, is the shakeup of what is it that you actually do at your work, and why do you do it? And I think that's going to be revitalizing to some people. And we've heard those direct stories where people are like, I never really thought about my job until we started to have to teach it to a robot. And they got re-energized by it. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And it's kind of on the topic of a skills-based economy. So instead of hiring somebody based on a title or, their background, it's what are the skills you're bringing? And actually, this BBC article, they cited this was a UK-based survey of employees and how they're really seeking opportunities to upskill and stay ahead of the AI-reliant landscape, which I thought was really interesting. So folks wanting to be, as opposed to being left behind, be a part of it and show that they have skills to either work with AI or skills that AI can't do, that really makes them human and a valuable part of the workforce. So I think that's a really interesting statistic as well. Very cool. Yeah. So similarly, if you don't mind if I jump in and share, because I feel it's very related here. One of the trends I'm seeing in 2024 is the rise of the agent. And so
right now we are very enamored with tools like ChatGPT. And it's like, but it's a general use tool. And so what we're going to see in 2024, and OpenAI has put the foundation work in 2023 to do this, is this agent ecosystem is going to pop up. And what agents are specifically trained. Trained isn't the right word, but tailored, because trained means something else in the world of AI. So they're specifically tailored to certain tasks. And so when you think about, if you're familiar with the GPT store that OpenAI has opened, which is like, you can create ChatGPT agents that do specific things. The number one use case, AI girlfriends. That was the number one thing that popped up and exploded through the GPT store, which OpenAI has said they are putting strict regulation around AI girlfriends, but there's been no sign of enforcement on anything. According to a recent report I was reading, I think it was an MIT review.
No, that's really interesting. And I know that seems kind of creepy to a lot of listeners, but I've been watching, I don't know if you've seen the show, Tim, Love on the Spectrum, but there's a lot of situations on that show. It's a dating show about different folks on the autism spectrum. And there's a lot of simulations where they go through with experts and teach them, what a normal date is or how to flirt, things like that. And I wonder if in this case, that actually could be a viable use case to teach different folks in that situations. So that's really interesting. Interesting.
And getting into cognitive models, which we'll save for a future episode. So interesting. So this year, I very much believe we are going to see more and more tailored agents appearing. And we're seeing this already in our clients where people want, I don't want just ChatGPT for my business. I want a ChatGPT system that can know everything about X. And like for Mind Over Machines, Katie is our agent. Katie knows all kinds of stuff about our client history and engagements and projects we've done, because Katie is the tribal storyteller.
Right.
That's her role in the organization. So as we think about this rise of agents, as listeners, as you're thinking about that, think of these as your sidekicks. This is the Robin to your Batman. What would you want it to be able to do? And the number one thing I always hear is manage my calendar. It's like, yep. But one more thing I'll add on this. It's not just GPTs and OpenAI. There's a company called DID, which does basically deep fake videos where you can create chat bots that are powered by OpenAI technology. So it's running GPT algorithms on the back end, but it has a face and you can talk to it and it talks back and it emotes and, all this stuff. Well, you can build agents directly through their web interface. And now you can have a customer service representative that knows a lot about a specific customer. It's not just, generic information anymore. It can get very tailored to that customer's experience. If you have that data in your CRM or ERP or backend system. So rise of agents.
No, that's really interesting. And I think the whole premise of the personification of, AI chatbots is definitely something that's honestly worth a whole other episode in itself, but worth contemplating. And actually on that note, one of the last pieces here in terms of another area that I'm looking at in terms of a perspective shift around AI. So we talked about businesses shifting their perspective, the workforce and employees shifting their perspective, but also personally. There was a really interesting study at Berkeley that showed that AI virtual coaches were found to be just as effective as human coaches in improving public speaking for their users. So not only can these, virtual agents be used for knowledge-based purposes, but also for coaching, mentoring, or professional development or personal development. So I thought that was just a really interesting study and perhaps could point towards the way that people start to integrate AI into their personal life. So I thought that was really interesting as well.
Yeah. Oh, totally. And that it's funny because from a learning perspective, we all had a paradigm shift, probably not too long ago where, well, not everybody necessarily, but many of us, where once upon a time we'd go find somebody who knew how to do it. Like for me, it was like, how do I fix this thing? Well, I'll go ask my dad. My dad knows how to fix everything. And then it was, well, now I can just look it up online. I'll go to Google and ask. And then it's, well, YouTube has videos on how to do everything. But now I'm very much in the, I already have like ChatGPT open or Bing Chat open. I'll just ask the question there. So, I think this evolution of where do we go to learn new skills is also growing. And you keep in mind like that, again, you marry up agents with like what you were just saying. And now it can know how to teach you that skill, not just how to learn that skill in general, but how you learn that skill.
That's really
very fascinating.
Yeah. Thinking about learning styles, it's really, really interesting. And rather than just looking something up, having somebody or a chatbot, an agent, a virtual agent, be able to answer questions in real time and take you through it. Yeah, it's an interesting way to think about different learning models.
Yeah, very cool. Well, one of the other trends I think we'll see a lot of in 2024 is small language models. So moving, definitely keeping into the multimodal. Like, so we're not just going to be doing text anymore. It's going to be images and text. I think by the end of the year, we'll see full video in the multimodal setup where you'll be able to produce video out of your AI systems like ChatGPT. And speak to it and have it speak back to you. That already is, you can already do that. But small language models, though, take a lot less compute and can run on much smaller devices like your cell phone. And so when we think about the power of this is, well, what if you could have your very own agent running on your phone that is trained on the data on your phone? Again, some people might be like, no, thank you. But again, this is where that control comes into place. Like, privacy isn't about keeping secrets, it's about controlling the information. And so what do you want the small language model to know? But this is great for the environment, as we talked about earlier, and the environmental impact of large language models. But this is also great for consumers. This is great for companies, that you don't have to run a giant ChatGPT system. You could run a much smaller language model system. And many of these small language model systems are starting open source, which is really fascinating because now it's more accessible. And for students, for people learning AI and growing in this world of AI, open source, this is the path to grow skills that don't normally have access to. So very exciting on many, many fronts, both from a cost savings perspective for business, as well as skills development for people who want to grow these AI skills, as well as personalization in our experiences. So.
Very, very cool. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I think this will be really interesting. So we touched on the perception shift in terms of just how AI will become part of the norm. We've talked about agents and small language models. I think another big area that will be interesting to keep an eye on is, as we have more and more data on companies adopting AI, we'll be able to understand the best ways to approach AI adoption when implementing these AI solutions, which I think will be huge. What else are we missing? What else do you think, Tim, is going to be something to keep an eye on for this year?
Regulation. I think that is going to be, that's on everybody's list for it's the AI bingo cards, for 2024. Regulation is on everybody's card.
Absolutely.
So, and we're already seeing it. I mean, earlier this year we had the AI the AI Act for EU. I think it was the end of December, where we got to see okay, here's the version that's going forward. And if you read all 900 pages of it, which, I'll admit I did not read all 900 pages of it, but I did read the 250-page summary of it. So I feel like when you had a 250-page summary, could you summarize it more?
Right. Right.
But it's fascinating. And what it really is getting, it's building on GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation. And, keeping users in control of their data, keeping people aware of what's being done and what's happening. But what's really fascinating in the EU Act is the creation of tiers of AI. And so you could say that there's forbidden AI. And one of the number one things is social scoring. So anyone who saw the Black Mirror episode Nosedive, that's what we're talking about there. But when you read the words, there's a question mark of, does credit scores fall into this? So very fascinating as you start kind of thinking through this. And then the next tier down is, I can't remember the name, but it's like critical. So, healthcare treatments, healthcare, any kind of medical impact, or the impact of somebody to be able to have a self-directed life, in essence. And so the next tier down are your like standard business systems that they do impact people and they do have impacts that are significant, but you're not going to kill somebody, and it's not going to, be the end of the world if these things go wrong. And then the final tier down is just, systems that are like video gaming systems, like, the AI driving the monsters or your bad guys in the video game.
Interesting. Yeah. I'm wondering where mental health would fall into that, especially the business side, kind of crossing over that into, I don't know if we always think of that as life or death, but I think there are some aspects to that to consider. I can see a lot of these areas overlapping a little bit.
Yeah, and I don't remember. I didn't refresh before our session today, which I should have. Sorry, guys. But I did refresh on the United States AI executive order, which was really interesting. The thing to watch for there is in the executive order, there's a lot of talk about the deep security testing that needs to be done on AI models. And when we hear that, it's like, yeah, that's a great thing. That absolutely should be done. But don't forget that covers open source models as well. So when you put on that restriction, what you're saying is you can't make something open source until it has had all of these activities. So as people are, starting up their company, you have now a restriction that you have to have this deep red team analysis of your AI model. And if you're just a one-person startup, you don't have a red team and you can't afford to do this. So there's a lot of question marks of, does this stifle open source, and how do we get a balance? Like, because it's not one or the other,
Right. Or could there be public red team, so to speak, that smaller companies could tap into and leverage if they don't have that, available expense-wise? Interesting. Yeah.
I have a feeling that is what's going to happen, is that there's going to be and I wouldn't be, it's not going to be in 2024, but I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing a utility model, like energy utility model, showing up in the AI world. I wouldn't be shocked. I would be very shocked if it happened at the global level. But I could see it happening at a national level. So could be interesting. Then I'm going to go one more step down from a tier. So, the EU is the reason I start with that at the top, because every country is looking at that as like, okay, what are they doing? Just like with privacy, that's where it all started. What are they doing? And then, the U.S. provides the executive order. And then Maryland, Governor Wes Moore just had an executive order around AI, which I see my friend Joe D'Amatos has joined us. So Joe is the one who put me on to like, hey, did you see this just happen? Like, no. So thank you, Joe. But, the AI executive order from Maryland is very fascinating in that it really does focus on upskilling, being focused on positive use cases. And it focuses on who owns AI for the state of Maryland. So I found that very interesting because that's not really addressed in these other executive orders and these other regulations for varying reasons. But it does raise a lot of questions of who owns AI. Mm-hmm. And I think that'll be a very popular question in 2024 for business. Who owns this AI thing?
Meaning the system or the output generated?
Thinking about AI as a program for your company, not as a software for your company. And this is where I think this is the growing pain that people are going to have in 2024. AI isn't just a software. It's not just ChatGPT. It's the governance around, it's the training around, the upskilling, how do we think about it in general? And how do we approach it? How do we apply it as a business?
Okay.
Yeah. And so who owns the AI strategy, and that's where we saw the rise of, the chief information security officer,
right.
Because once upon a time, all that was just, that's on IT. And in some places it still is, depending on the size of the organization. But I think we're going to see a similar track for AI. Same with the chief data officer, again, once upon a time that just is all in IT. Now we're going to see, I think, the rise of the AI executive, and we're already seeing head of AI roles out the wazoo as people post them on LinkedIn. What do they do? Nobody really knows, but they do AI stuff. So
exactly. Interesting. Very cool.
Cool. Well, what else? 2024 tally.
I'm trying to think. I mean, I think those are the main areas I'm going to, stay, try to stay informed on. I think also just understanding how folks are using these tools. Again, just because of my obsession with psychology, how, different types of, mindsets or ways of thinking, how AI could really be tailored to a specific person's mindset, and hopefully make that more accessible for folks with different ways of thinking or taking in information, hopefully making information a lot more accessible. I'm thinking off the bat, deaf and blind communities using AI in a way to, I think AI for inclusion and accessibility is really, there's a lot of opportunity for that. I'm curious to see how much investment different organizations will put into AI, into that area. But I think, I think it'll be exciting to see the ways in which AI will hopefully help different populations. So again, have the hyper optimistic outlook. So fingers crossed here for 2024.
Yeah, same here. I think we're getting over the, oh my gosh, what is this? And getting into the, oh my gosh, what can I do with this?
Right.
And I'm hopeful that the narrative can focus not in a Pollyanna, everything's going to be wonderful. There's no tech utopian. Come on, this isn't a science fiction novel. We're not looking at the perfection of the world with technology. Right. So, but we are getting a really powerful tool. Right. How can we use this to make everyone's life better?
Absolutely.
And I'm hopeful that we really dig into those questions in 2024. And that's where, companies, you can do this. If you're involved in government, you can do this. If you're involved in nonprofits, you can do this. If you're an educator, you can do this. Helping people see the possibility of making great change with these tools. Everybody has the power to do it. So very exciting stuff.
A lot of great ideas. And I think this is just another tool to hopefully advance those really fantastic ideas that are already out there.
Yeah. Cool. Well, you want to move into wins?
Let's do it on that positive note.
All right, Tally, you kick it off. What's the win?
So this is not AI related, but it is augmented reality related. I've always been really interested in art, but recently watercolor has been my latest hobby. And in doing so, you usually need a foundational drawing to kind of go off of a lot of the time. I am not a drawer by any means, so I thought, how can I use technology to hopefully get me, to a point where my drawings are in a place where I can paint them. And there's a bunch of really cool applications out there that leverage augmented reality on your phone. So you can actually trace images on your piece of paper. The app I have is just a free one. I think it's Projector. But it's been really fun to see, again, how technology, and I'm sure there's folks out there that will maybe see that as cheating, it's quote unquote, in the art world. But I think it's just another tool to add to your artist tool belt to hopefully, get the image or idea that you have on paper. So that's been a really fun, just personal technology use case that I've been playing around with recently.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, when the photography, when the camera was invented, people were like, that's not art,
right.
And now photography is a thing,
Right.
So same with, you think about like artists like Mondrian. They drew a bunch of squares on the paper. That's not art. Well, yeah, it is. So, yeah, I think that's awesome. That's an awesome use case and a great example of like identifying, okay, here's an area where technology can improve me. Like, let's get the tools going and let's go. I think it's great. So.
Awesome. Yeah, no, it's been really fun. Definitely encourage folks to look around, and also with AI to do image generation and digital media. I think, there's a lot of cool technologies out there to play around with art wise. Yeah.
Agreed. So, my win this week, I would say, there's a lot of very interesting things going on from the world of Davos and all that. But I would actually say my win this week is I saw Across the Spider-Verse. My daughter and I watched it, and holy moly, what a amazingly good movie on so many levels. The artist in me is just like watching this, jaw hanging with, it's gorgeous, like a gorgeous movie. And made with Adobe tools. I'm a big Adobe fan too. So if you haven't seen Across the Spider-Verse, check it out. You don't need to watch the first movie to like really get a grip on it. But I do recommend the first movie as well, which was also very good, Into the Spider-Verse. So third movie comes out in March. My daughter and I are super excited to go see it. So
very cool. I'll have to take a look. I haven't seen it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think that's it for us for today. And we'll have another Boring AI show coming in 2 weeks, if I remember correctly, Tally. Yep. Okay. Check on LinkedIn to see it. Also, we record the Boring AI show episodes, and you can find them all on the Boring AI show landing page, which we'll put at the bottom of this event today. So feel free to go check out old episodes. And don't forget, sign up for our newsletter to kind of keep in tune with what we're watching and what we see that's going on out in the business world with AI. So I think that's it for today. Tally, any closing notes?
No, that should do it. Yeah, we'll leave some notes at the bottom here so that way you can find those links to the newsletters as well. But thanks for joining, guys. It's been a really fun discussion.
Yeah, and as always, thank you, Tally, for joining me today. And we'll catch everybody on the next episode. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Bye.